Welcome back to the secret world of human trafficking. I'm your host, David J. Story. I'm also the author of the Omega book series. Today we have a special guest. Let's go ahead and hear what they have to say. Hello, I want to welcome our guest tonight. Her name is Tina Dixon. Won't you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Well, hello, David. Thank you so much for having me. Well, my name is Tina Dixon, and I am a survivor of human traffic and the founder of the Queens Arise program, where we give human trafficking survivors an opportunity to earn a degree towards a professional career. We
That's great.
offer mentorship, career training, and long term job readiness and job support as they go out into the professional.
That's wonderful. There's not enough of that out there. Uh, a lot of people think, once a survivor is freed of their trafficker, that's the end of it. But that's just the beginning for that person. A lot of them don't have any skills,
That's
and
absolutely true. This all started I over the course as I said, I'm a survivor of trafficking. And over the course of my exploitation, the last trafficker that I was with was in Las Vegas, and he owned escort services. And he sent me to school for digital marketing so that I could learn to run digital marketing on the escort service and put up ads and manage and do websites and so I learned all of these skills while I was being trafficked. And once I went into a treatment and recovery program for that, I was able to get a job mainstream in digital marketing because I had these skills. And
hmm
so as a result of that, I founded with my co-founder, Brian Smith, Ring Lab Media, and we are a performance marketing agency, advertising agency. And from that, it involved me being a kind of a business development person. There was a lot of networking going on. So I created Queens, which was initially a just a networking organization where there were Skype groups, there were Facebook groups, and then we met at the trade shows and we'd have like breakfasts or cocktail parties, and they, just get together and network with one another and learn to do business with one another. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because I had noticed, being that I was exploited myself, and I started entering this advertising world and this trade show world, there were women at the booths that were being exploited. You'd see women in little t-shirts, scantily dressed, and they were used as clickbait. And when the deal went down and the commission was paid, they got very little, if any, of the commission. So what Queens did is it created these spaces where women could network with one another and do business with one another. So as a result of that, one of my colleagues had a marketing academy for we do a specific kind of marketing called pay per call. Pay per call is not marketing like affiliate marketing for clicks, but the publisher set up campaigns on Facebook and Google's to generate calls. And those
hmm
calls go to like insurance companies, home services companies like plumbing, electrical, roofing, or travel. We do a lot of travel, air, hotel, rental car. And I would develop relationships with those customers that were buying those calls, and we became like a broker.
really,
And and it was kind of a new niche, so everybody wanted to network together for pay per call. And this one of my colleagues, like I said, he had an academy where he taught pay per call,
hmm
and he awarded us $10,000 scholarships to his academy.
wow,
He had this mastermind class where he walked with people and taught them how to be media buyers in pay per call. So I went about trying to find survivors to put into these classes. We got a few survivors, but what happened was we found out that, they really hadn't worked professionally. So although they had the aptitude, they didn't have the background training. So we kind of had to dial it back and we just built out a curriculum, and we ended up getting survivors, and it just grew and grew and grew. we ended up with doing I did, like my nonprofit did 300,000 in revenue last year
Oh,
just from and we the beauty of that $300,000 is that we were able to educate 25 survivors and put them in jobs.
that is fantastic. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need more people like you and more businesses like you that will train these survivors and get them back
Well,
in the
because what
workforce.
happens is that they end up going to work at a minimum wage job. They've become attuned to having a lot of money and living a very high lifestyle, and they go back a lot because they can't really earn a living wage. So
Yeah, I had interviewed a survivor, and she knew nothing about the workforce because she was put into trafficking at an early age, and she couldn't survive on working at like McDonald's or minimum wage. So she went back to selling her body. So that's what she knew, and she'd make a lot more money selling her body than flipping hamburgers.
that's exactly right, and so what we do is we try to show women that they can earn these professional salaries. Matter of fact, a recent graduate of my program, I have an employment partner, Law Logic, and they do marketing for for attorneys for like tort cases, like sexual assault cases with Uber or hotel sexual assault. They do a lot of sexual assault cases, and they survivors to come in and monitor as the leads come in, somebody that really had been there to field these phone calls and field these leads so that it was like a trauma informed atmosphere. So I sent one of my girls over there, and 3 months into it, she got promoted to the head of that department at 85,000 a year. And this is
Wow.
a woman that had 6 children. She had just gotten all of her children back in her home. She was working so hard. She'd been out of the life for 4 years, and this was really a solid opportunity for her to take care of her children.
Mm,
So,
that
but
is wonderful.
so what happened with Queens and where we're at right now is that, I got sick in January. I had a surgery, and in the process of that, I wasn't really able to network. We lost a really big funder, and the money that I was putting in no longer could manage the organization because we had salaries to pay, and it
Mhm.
had just grown so much. So right now, we're in the process of regrouping. Rather than being nationally based, we're going to be focused in Louisiana and Mississippi area so that I can really get out there and network, and I can create not only remote employment opportunities for remote jobs, but employment opportunities in healthcare facilities and hospitality and these other corporations that I can place girls in and do it more locally so that I can manage it easier myself without having to have a full staff. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Okay, great. Well, tell us a little bit about your history. I understand that you spend a little time in the trafficking world.
I actually did. I actually spent over 20 years in the trafficking world. I ran away from home when first of all, I grew up in a very dysfunctional household. My father was president of an outlaw motorcycle club. My mom was a psychic. It was pure chaos in my house. And I ran away I started running away when I was 12. I finally ran away at 13. 13, well, I'm at 13. And when I was 14, I ran away to Bourbon Street to New Orleans, and the first guy that I met, the first trafficker that I met was a biker with the Galloping Gooses Motorcycle Club, and got me an ID, and he put me to work in stripping in the clubs, and he would take all the money. And then further down, I met a member of the Dixie Mafia. I went into this locals bar where all the industry people went, and he was sitting in there, and I walked in, and there he sat with a three-piece suit and a brim and a pistol sitting on the table, and I'll never forget. there that's my kind of man because I was a child and I just wanted to be cool. And I thought the gangsters were cool and I wanted just like today when young girls get involved with the gangs, it's they want to be cool, they want to be accepted, they want to be loved. And I didn't have a lot of that at home. So this was just an opportunity, you know. So I met up with him and we ended up leaving the French Quarter and we went on a 3-day tour of all these little beer joints and backroom card games and lots of drugs and alcohol till we got to the point on the 3rd day, we stopped at his bar right outside of Baton Rouge, and he took me inside there, and the woman that was managing his bar, they went in the back room, and they had a back room full of racks and racks of little short dresses, and they had makeup cases all on the
Mm,
shelf, and they were ready to take me to the country where they had the Dixie Mafia ran a circuit of backroom brothels from Mississippi, from Louisiana all the way through Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, all through the southern states. And
wow.
they would just flip these girls to different places. I remember the first place that I went to was called The Spot. And when he left, he said, I'm gonna leave you here for 10 days and you just make us some money. It'll be just like the strip clubs, only better. Uh,
Mm,
and it was not
yeah.
on there. So I spent probably about 3.5 to 4 years till I was 17 and working the circuit. I would go to a place, I would stay for 10 days. He would come get me. He would pick me up and get the money. They wouldn't even pay me, they'd pay him.
Of
And
course.
and he'd take me out partying and buy me a bunch of clothes and get my hair done and my nails done. And I just thought that was, I became like kind of attuned to that world.
Mhm.
And, looking at like who my old man was, I was so cool because he was a big shot in the Dixie Mafia. And not even really like understand the depth of what was going on. That I was a 14-year-old child and I was being locked up in a brothel to turn 10 to 12 tricks a day.
Wow. And I'm sure you didn't get any of that money.
No, none of that. None of that. I say this all the time. I recently bought a Lexus, and I say this all the time. Well, I bought enough Lexuses and Cadillacs and fancy cars. This time, this is my car buying it for me because
There you
it
go.
really was. And during that time, there was a lot of drugs around, a lot of alcohol. They give you black mollies and little speed pills to keep you going. That we weren't allowed to drink, but I would always sneak drinks from the customers, and I would get angry and say, "I'm gonna leave," and they'd lock you in a room, and they'd call him up, and you'd be disciplined in front of all the other ladies to kinda teach a lesson about that.
What did they do to discipline you?
The beat you either with a belt or a clothes hanger or something in front of all the girls.
Wow.
So and then they would expect you to go right back to work
Really?
afterwards.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very rough and for that, it, like, devastated me emotionally and mentally.
I'm sure.
And when I was 17, he had brought me out of the brothels. He had a bar in, one of the swampy areas of South Louisiana. He had kinda built his own little joint. And so I worked at this club, and he would leave me in charge of the bar often. And one time he walked in and I was doing drugs with a client, with a customer. And he beat me with a pool stick until I was unconscious. Um, he left me on the side of a 7-Eleven store. And so at that point, I called my father. My father came and got me. I stayed in the hospital, stayed in a mental hospital for about 3 months because I was just a mess. I went to live with my grandmother and I started getting my GED and I went to college like nothing ever happened. like like it was just all shoved under the
Yeah.
rug. And so I got married and I had 2 children at the 17 was my first. I had my first baby at 18 and then the second one at 20. And I did really well for a couple of years, but those demons in my head was haunting me. And I ended up leaving my children and going back to him because
Wow.
I didn't I didn't know how to survive outside of that world.
That's
And
pretty much all you knew as a young adult was that
so
world.
that's what I knew. That's what and I just couldn't get past all the demons in my head, and I'd go to rehab, but the rehabs weren't addressing trauma back then. They didn't even know what trauma was. This is the late 70s. They
Mhm.
knew they would just shove the 12 steps down your throat and think you're gonna get better, and that didn't happen for me. So I ran away and I left my children with my Iranian husband and went back to him and then ended up running away from him. And I spent some time on the streets. By this time, I had a pretty hefty cocaine habit. And so, went to Dallas to work for an escort service and I met another trafficker.
Mm.
And my life just became a merry-go-round of 25 years of drugs and alcohol and traffickers and just being out on the streets. I really I bottomed. I was a true bottom addict, alcoholic, prostitute at the bottom of the barrel. I had gotten down that far. And then in 1997, I had was in San Antonio, Texas, and I was hitchhiking with the truck driver. I had went to Louisiana. I was trying to get back to California, and I went into some housing projects to buy some drugs. And I went in there, was kind of intoxicated already, um, and bought some drugs. The drugs turned out to be fake. So I went back into the projects and bought some real drugs, came
Mhm.
back, and I saw the guy that had sold me the fake drugs. And because I had been drinking, I started talking crazy to him. You better give me my money, da 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 da. And he kept saying, "You get out of here, white girl. You better get out of here." And I kept talking, and he shot me twice.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, he shot me twice. And I say this when I share my story in recovery circles. I say this a lot that the truest form of powerlessness was experienced that night. I had the drugs that I had purchased, the real drugs in my mouth. And because that's what addicts do when they buy drugs, they put them in their mouth under their tongue so they can swallow them real quick if the cops come. So
Mhm.
I had these drugs in my mouth and I'm down on the ground. I've been shot twice. I'm going into shock. And the only thing that I can think of, and I ask out loud, who's got a pipe? Because the only thing that mattered to me was to do those drugs because I was powerless over that addiction.
Mm.
And so I came back to Louisiana after that happened and I started trying to build a life again. I still had a drug habit, so I was in and out of either rehab or I'd do good for a little while and then I'd blow my life up again. And then I'd go on a crack run and I'd prostitute and do all the stuff to get all the drugs. And I went through that cycle until basically, David, I was 48 years old. I was one of those women that just couldn't put it down. And I see women like that every day, and I'm like, that could be me. I see women sitting under expressways, homeless women, and think that could have been
Yeah.
me.
I see them all the time here in Atlanta.
And so in 2013, I went through a program called the Destiny House. It was with Annie LeBaire. She runs an organization called Hookers for Jesus. And what that means is it refers to the verse in Matthew, we shall be fishers of men. And so she took
Mhm.
a slant on that. She caught a bunch of mess for that. But they had a program in Las Vegas that I stayed in for a year and I received trauma therapy and was able, and then that's when I started working in digital marketing when I was in that. So, yeah, it was a long run. Most women that get to that point, they just don't come to the other side of it. But, I had the opportunity to get some really good therapy and mix in a little bit of Jesus with that. And I was able to get to the other side of that. It's just crazy that, I did that so late in life.
Yeah, I mean, that is late to be out on the streets and hustling and selling yourself, and you're lucky you're sitting here.
Absolutely. There was many times that I should have been dead. I mentioned 2 on this podcast already. But God had another plan for me. God had another
Exactly.
for me, and I was able, to start working in digital marketing. I started earning a really good salary. I relapsed a few more times, and then in 1999, I met Arthur Dixon, who in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting,
Mhm,
and we got married, and he got custody of his 5-year-old daughter, or he was 4 at the time, Lacey. And I really, I had lost my first 2 children, and my mother heart yearned to be, for a child. And so when I had Lacey, I began to have longer periods of sobriety and longer periods of staying clean.
that's good.
And I got involved in the church and all of that, and then actually Arthur got liver disease, and he had to have a liver transplant from he was a recovering addict as well, and so he got hepatitis C and ended up having to have a liver transplant, and Arthur didn't make it through that transplant. He made it through the transplant, he died 3 months later, and that threw me for a loop. That threw me for a loop, and
Yeah.
I ended up in Annie's house is because I went back out and I started using drugs. And from that, I went into I got to, like, almost the bottom again, lost everything, and here I had built a career. I have a if you look at my resume, you can see during those years I had really good jobs because I had learned digital marketing
Mhm.
in the game. So, after that happened, after Arthur died, I just went like I said, I went out again. There's just too much drama, too much that I couldn't handle with him being gone. He was like my rock. He was what held me up. And I had one more really bad run. And then in 2013, that's when I went into the Destiny House. And I've been clean since 2000.
That's great, congratulations.
And so I'm 63 now. I was 48 and I continued to work in digital marketing. I bought my first house when I was 52 and I'm currently building a house and I own a third. So I have 3 pieces of real estate right now. I'm building an Airbnb and I really and truly believe that God gave me what I have today because I give back. And for me, my job is to take care of his kids, and he's given me the resources to do that. And that's how Queens Arrives came about. Because I really, in the beginning, that was my own money that got all this started.
Yeah,
And then we got funders as we grew, and we lost funders like any nonprofit. I know over the last couple of years, that a lot of nonprofits have lost their funding, and I was one of them. But I'm ready to come back strong with Queens, and we have some plans. We're still giving out scholarships. I have a collaboration with Penn Foster College, and we have access to 12 different career certificates: medical assistants, dental assistant, medical records, vet tech, IT, culinary. And so I'm awarding those certificates to survivors. Those
very
four.
good.
We'll do a contest in fourth quarter, and I'll award those four scholarships. And probably next year we'll do the same thing. And then in 2028, when I retire, then I'm gonna really focus on Queens full time. I just couldn't keep doing everything. You get to a certain age and you just can't do everything anymore.
I can relate to that totally. So how does someone get involved in your nonprofit and maybe help out with maybe some donations or scholarships?
We are located on the web at Queens, QUEENSDM. That stands for Queens of Digital Marketing. So it's queensdm.org. And you can go there and you can click through the site and learn about what we're doing. And there's an orange donate button there that you can donate directly to the scholarship fund. And we will be, like I said, awarding those 4 scholarships in fourth quarter, probably around November.
That's great. Now I
And so
understand you go ahead.
I was gonna say what you were gonna say. I am writing a book.
Yeah.
It's it's called, Going to the Country,
Mhm.
and it is the story of my life, and the reason that it's called Going to the Country is when I was taken to those different brothels in the swamps of Louisiana, after my few days of partying and getting my hair done, he'd say, "Okay, honey, it's time to go back to the country. We're going to the country." Because all of these brothels were deep in the woods in different like Mamu and Ville Platte and Krotz Springs and small little Louisiana towns, sleepy little Louisiana towns run by this misfit band of gangsters called the Dixie Mafia. And so it outlines that story in detail. It gets really gritty, and then it outlines my redemption. So it talks about my relationship with God and how that saved me from helped me to get out of the life that I had been living for so long. But it's not really a religious book. It's a memoir, and it has some true crime elements and some inspirational elements and some hope for people that think, like I run into women all the time that are in their 40s, late 40s and 50s. And I can tell them, they can look at me and they can see that I made it out and that I made a new life for myself. And they can too, because that's the whole point. I just want to be hope for somebody else.
Yeah, we need more people like you in your organization out there.
Thank you,
I
David. Thank
think
you so much.
yeah. I know you're doing great work in God's work, and you're saving people in more ways than one. You're saving them from the world of sex trafficking, and you're saving their souls.
100%. Like, there's a lot of organizations out there that have boots on the street, that have housing programs, that have therapy programs. But there's not very many that have financial empowerment programs where we literally can take someone from a housing program and show them how to take care of themselves so they never have to return to the streets again.
That's the key is giving them the resources to not have to go back and having to live like they did
That's
in
exactly
order to survive. Yeah.
that's exactly
Well,
right.
that's great. You mentioned you've have several children.
I do, I do. I
Are they
have
are they in your life or
they are in my life and they weren't, like
very good?
I have a son that was born in my addiction, that's 30 years old, 32 years old, and he was born with autism. And he went through his own addictions, his own alcoholism. But he's in my life, and I've just gotten him into a really good program with a psychiatrist because God's given me the ability to be able to pay for these good doctors. So he's going into a brain remediation program so that
Mhm.
he can do the work that I did, so that he can help himself. And I have 4 grandchildren, and I have a daughter and son in Las Vegas, and a daughter here in Louisiana with 4 grandchildren, a set of twins, and 2 little girls, 8 and 11. And I'm that mama. I'm always at either the travel ball or the gymnastic meets, or I'm taking them to practice, or I'm doing all the things that I never thought that I would be able to. I live for
That's
being a
great.
grandma. Yeah.
That is great. That's great that you was able to recon get in contact with them again, and become the mom and now the grandma that they needed.
That's right. That's right.
Well, good, well, good. Anything else you want to tell us?
Well, no, I just hope I know that on your on the listing for this podcast, you'll have a link where they can go sign up for the pre-launch of my book, or you can visit
Hmm.
our site at queensdm.org to make a donation to our scholarship program. We would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll make sure I have that on the site. Looking
Okay. Well,
forward to it.
thank you so much,
Well,
David. I appreciate it.
no problem. I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
All right. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Well, that's it for our show for today. Hope you learned something that will perhaps protect you and a family member. Follow me on Facebook. Go to my website, davidjstory.com, to learn more about the Omega book series, my podcast, and my blogs. And always remember, always watch your six and others too.